The series begins with the dawn of a young man named Hugh Campbell, whose life was turned upside down after his girlfriend Robin was accidentally killed by the world's fastest hero, A-Train. The news of Robin's death was eventually publicized. Still, A-Train managed to kill the issue by fabricating a villain cover-up tale, the essential action within the saga that shaped Huey throughout the series. Huey was irritated and suffering from mental difficulties and flashbacks due to Robin's tragic death. Huey was later handed a large sum of money as a consolation, which he refused despite his father pleading to accept it and forget the entire matter, especially as it was nearly typical in the world of soups to win in any situation, even when they were wrong. Meanwhile, the Seven recruited a church girl named Annie, whom they branded Starlight. Vought chose 7 important superheroes who dealt with major issues and gained the hearts of the American people. Annie had always been excited about joining the Seven and becoming one of the world's greatest superheroes, ensuring people's safety and the world's balance. Deep, one of the 7, took advantage of her situation on the first night, especially after she murmured something about crushing on him in the past and sexually assaulted her, which surprised her because she held these superheroes in high regard. She would ultimately witness additional shocking attitudes by the Supes, leaving her puzzled about whether Vought had been fooling her and the world. Butcher, a former FBI agent whose objectives initially sounded peculiar, recruited Huey, and his first job was to put a bug in Vought, the Seven's headquarters. Vought is the international corporation that benefits from the controls of the superheroes, primarily the Seven. Vought was responsible for ensuring their heroes were protected at all costs, no matter what they did. Huey was first anxious, but finally consented, especially after remembering Robin's unpleasant death, and he successfully executed the plan, utilizing his situation with A-Train to his advantage. Still, he was caught by Translucent, a Seven member with the power to turn invisible. Stillwell, the assistant CEO of Vought, was threatened by Mayor Steve, who was aware of Compound V. They eventually reached an arrangement after Stillwell promised him a large sum of money to be silent. He was subsequently intercepted on his way home on a plane by Homelander, the strongest and most fearsome of the Seven, who overheard his conversation with Stillwell. Homelander's abilities are similar to the divine abilities of DC's Superman. He lasered the plane and stood there silently, watching it crash. Meanwhile, Butcher and Huey are assaulted by Translucent, who wants to discover why the bug was planted. He attempted to kill them, but they were able to knock him out. Butcher had to seek assistance from an old friend, Frenchie, a weird individual who initially resisted, but eventually joined the gang after plenty of convincing from Butcher. After repeated attempts to kill Translucent, they discovered he was indestructible. His body was impenetrable. After a while, Frenchie had an idea to put a bomb down Translucent's ass, claiming that Translucent is impenetrable on the surface, but delicate on the inside. They warned Translucent not to try to escape unless they would blow him up. Still, when Butcher and Frenchie were gone, he tried to escape, knowing full well that Huey wasn't a killer, and tried to use it to his advantage. But Huey blew him up, seeing that there was no other way to stop him, and out of rage on the Supes for killing his girlfriend and covering it up. To avoid raising suspicion, Huey was not permitted to return home after his death, and it was during this time they learned about Compound V. Huey returned home to grab some clean clothes as a result of his earlier incident with Translucent. He got into an argument with his father. A-Train was addicted to Compound V, so he went to meet his lover Popclaw, who also had powers. She feeds him V whenever he arrives, one of the circumstances that led to Robin's death. He took the V to make him run faster so he wouldn't be replaced in the Seven by another prospective speedster, despite his brother's warning to stop due to the compound causing him heart difficulties. It was discovered after some time by the Vigilante Boys, Huey, Butcher, Frenchie, and Mother's Milk, whom Butcher had persuaded to join his squad after a poor history that they had in the past, which was blamed on Frenchie. They bugged Popclaw's apartment, and when they acquired some information that would implicate her, following a controversial act she made due to being enraged by A-Train declaring he was single in public after winning the speedster race and retaining his place in the 7. They threatened to expose her murder video if she didn't tell them everything she knew about Compound V. So she did. They also made a promise not to tell A-Train anything. Because the boys couldn't burn translucent body parts, they decided to dump them at the bottom of the harbor, which was discovered by the Deep and carried to Homelander, the leader of the 7, who was enraged because he had been searching for translucent and the text written on the box declared war. Huey later went on a date with Starlight, whom he initially met as Annie in the park. His goal was to gain some information on Vought from her. Although he wasn't comfortable with what he was doing, he had to do it to bring Vought down. They were actually in love with each other and shared several steamy scenes. On one of their missions, they saw a mutant Kimiko and thought she was a prisoner until she killed one of the guards in cold blood. This made the other guys in the gang afraid, but Frenchie didn't give up on her. After a long fight, she finally fell unconscious. They took her to their hideout and caged her, and after a long while, she developed trust in the gang, all thanks to Frenchie. She couldn't talk, but was a huge asset to the gang because of her metahuman strength and ability to heal fast. Meanwhile, Vought had been working hard to bring the Supes into the American military, and Homelander and Maeve's mission to salvage the plane on the verge of crashing was one way to help. There were a lot of people on the plane. When they boarded the plane, they cheered, hoping that Homelander had come to save them. Homelander entered the plane, assuring them of their safety, the innocent crowd rejoicing, unaware of the horrific situation that was about to unfold. Homelander accidentally killed the pilot while attempting to stop the criminals on the plane and gave Maeve the signal that it would be time to leave. Maeve begged him to save them, especially a young girl and her mother. But Homelander made it clear that he didn't need any witnesses to convey that they couldn't save everyone, which would jeopardize their chances of being accepted into the military, and eventually left the plane with Maeve. The plane crashed, killing everyone on board. During the news broadcast, Homelander turned the situation around, giving a heartfelt speech to the people and apologizing for not being there to save the plane, claiming that they weren't informed. He used this to support his claim that the government should incorporate superheroes into their military. The guys needed to meet with Ezekiel, a Supe who used his famous status to deliver Compound V to hospitals disguised as polio vaccines. Therefore, they had to attend one of Ezekiel's special events where certain Supes, including Starlight, were present. They couldn't see Ezekiel, but the pass card to his flat cost around $150,000, so Butch urged Huey to seek Starlight's assistance. With a pass, Starlight could smuggle Huey through their defenses and into Ezekiel's space. Huey later threatened Ezekiel and discovered the location of the hospital that all the Compound V was sent to. Before infiltrating the hospital, the boys had to pass through security. They spotted a lot of babies who had been injected with Compound V and took pictures of proof. Meanwhile, Starlight couldn't handle all that was happening in the 7 and stormed the stage, telling everyone how she was doing her best to act like the role model and how Deep sexually assaulted her when she joined the 7. Huey met up with her after the show to congratulate her on her speech, but she appeared irritated when she saw him. She told him that she knew he was using her, and he tried to explain himself to her by telling her about Compound V. She appeared shocked, but still felt it wasn't good enough excuse and broke up with him there. Starlight's statements complicated things, and they couldn't fire her because the fans would get suspicious, leading to a drop in their stock. So they made Deep perform a public apology, confessing to assaulting Starlight and pleading for her forgiveness. He also had to take a sabbatical from the 7 for some days. They promised to accept him back immediately after he was done, but had other intentions. Huey was upset by his breakup with Starlight, but Butcher consoled him by explaining why he wanted to take Homelander and Vought down. He suspected that his wife was either missing or had been murdered by Homelander. One of the Vought workers discovered footage of Frenchie entering Popclaw's room and informed A-Train, so he went to his girlfriend's apartment and asked naively if anyone knew about Compound V, but she lied. He eventually killed her because Homelander felt she was a liability, because they knew she was lying and were afraid their enemies would further manipulate her. He then instructed Homelander where to meet someone who had all of the descriptions of the boys' members. Homelander met the man and took the pictures to the headquarters, where he called for a meeting emphasizing the drastic decrease in the number of the Seven, as well as exposing the identities of the members of the Seven. Starlight, seeing Huey, tried to defend him, but it was all brushed aside. Homelander suspected her of treason and wanted to obliterate her, but Maeve calmed him down. When A-Train saw the pictures, he immediately remembered his encounter with Huey and planned to capture him. He approached Huey's house and approached his father. He didn't make it look suspicious or make his father afraid. He simply informed his father that he needed to speak to Huey on the phone and that it was important. So he contacted Huey and told him that A-Train was looking for him. Hearing this made him nervous, and A-Train took the phone and stated that if Huey did not come to his house right away, he would kill his father like he killed his girlfriend Robin. So Huey raced to the house. A-Train caught him off guard and tried to kill him, but he tricked A-Train into an argument, giving Kimiko enough time to break A-Train's leg. His father was quickly hurried away and taken to a safer place. Homelander wanted to know what happened to Butcher's acclaimed wife Rebecca, so he was directed by Madeline Stillwell to fight scientist Jonah Vogelbaum, who told him that Rebecca died giving birth to his son, with the child dying in a pool of his mother's blood. Homelander became skeptical since the miscarriage story Stillwell told him differed from Jonah's, leading him to believe that Vought was keeping him in the dark. The boys finished gathering information and presented it to the agency. They had enough evidence to shut down Vought, but something went wrong. Super terrorists were discovered in various parts of the world. Soup terrorists that only heroes could stop. Because of the recent instances, the agency backed out and did not expose Vought, which halted all of the boys' efforts. Homelander and A-Train were crucial to the development of these soup terrorists. Starlight was having a heated dispute with her mother over Compound V, and she couldn't believe her mother had been lying to her all this time. They used to believe that soups were born with supernatural abilities, and their abilities were gifts from God. This caused Starlight to appear carefree and unconcerned for a time before Maeve persuaded her to reconsider her decision. But first, Huey, her ex, begged her to help him rescue his friends, Frenchie and Kimiko, who were in trouble, but she refused. Meanwhile, Butcher, having lost his gang, was determined to take serious actions against Homelander after refusing to aid Huey in rescuing their friends too. Grace Mallory provided him with crucial intel regarding Homelander's particular connection with Madeline Stillwell, which Butcher intended to exploit. After catching Stillwell off guard, he tracked her down and put a bomb on her. She had to call upon Homelander because it was the only way to save her and her baby, which she was frequently shown within the series and Homelander was jealous of. Butcher outlined to Homelander what would happen if he didn't do or answer questions he would ask. Homelander stared at Stillwell and told her that he had discovered the truth. He asked why she lied to him, and she said she was afraid of him. He then kissed her and then lasered her right in her eyeballs until she is dead. Butcher decided to pull the trigger and blow up the entire house when he realized he had no leverage against Homelander. Everywhere became blurry, almost as if Billy Butcher was dead. When Billy opened his eyes, he saw Homelander standing beside him and his loving wife with a super son in front of him. It appeared Homelander had rescued Butcher before the explosion could affect him. Huey freed his friends from their detainment but ran into difficulties on the way out. Luckily, Starlight came to their rescue. He was surprised to see her because he assumed she wouldn't come. They were interrupted by A-Train, who attempted to stop them while muttering the words traitor to Starlight. As he tried to stop them, he had a heart attack, and then Huey tried to give him CPR, but Starlight urged him to leave because he wasn't safe there. The season ended with Starlight giving A-Train CPR in his critical condition, and Butcher shocked to see his lovely wife and his son with Homelander beside them. The second installment of the intriguing series kicked off where it started with Homelander just discovering he had a son, and he was delighted. Meanwhile, Billy Butcher was AWOL and was blamed for Madam Stillwell's death, causing all of the members of the America's Most Wanted criminals to maintain a low profile. Homelander's plan to leak Compound V was successful, resulting in super terrorists, prompting the government to consider superheroes joining the military. The scenario, however, irritated Vought CEO Stan Egger, who sent a strong warning to Homelander. Annie remained with the Seven since her secret was still safe because A-Train was still in a coma. She was still working secretly to expose Vought, and she was still trying to preserve her long-distance connection with Huey to escape being murdered by Homelander. Stormfront was the added addition to the Seven because Vought revealed to the public that Translucent was no longer alive. She was incredibly excellent at social media, particularly TikTok, and she possessed spectacular lightning powers which aided her cool personality. When the boys uncovered the super terrorist who had been smuggled into the country, they had to go to their CIA contractor to make a deal with them to clean their reputation. But her head popped while they were talking. After a while, Billy Butcher reappears. Homelander did not kill him. Instead, he left him off at a remote location because Becca made a deal with him to spare his life in exchange for the rights to visit his son at any time. It was dreadful for Rebecca to watch a rapist hanging out with her child as if they were one happy family. At one time, she called Vought to remind them of their agreement to keep Homelander from finding out about them, but they told her they couldn't control Homelander. Homelander did his hardest to be a good father, but the fact that he never had parents hampered him because he never learned how to care for a child. He also missed his motherly figure, Stillwell, and regretted killing her. He had the shape-shifting soup turn into her now and again so he could have sex with her in a private place. It was somewhat of a mental attitude on his part. Butcher eventually finds the location where Becca and her son had been concealed, and he caresses her and stays with her for a while before both of them decide on how to escape together. Butcher, upon hearing that she had intended to bring her son, tried to discourage her diplomatically, but Becca quickly discovers his intentions and decided to stay. The boys met with Grace Mallory, who informs them that they must arrest the supreme terrorist to clear their names. But when they arrive at his location, they discover that he is Kimiko's long-lost brother. Because he had been manipulated, Kimiko was forced to assist them in apprehending her brother. In the boat, she tried to calm him down. Butcher was willing to give Kimiko's brother away, but Kimiko and the others were not. Meanwhile, Starlight blackmails A-Train to obtain a sample of the substance Compound V, but A-Train quickly awakens and grabs it from her, threatening to use it to prove that she is a traitor. Then, Starlight revealed the dirt he had on him, a video of him killing Popclaw, and they ended up canceling each other out. Starlight was fortunate in that she could leak Compound V, and she was convinced this would bring down Vought. The law enforcement found the boys, but Kimiko's brother, who had escaped, used his telekinesis to crash the plane. On seeing this news, Edgar had an idea. He told the heroes to go and stop the supervillain, and nobody would care about where they got their powers from. Deep was then demoted from the Seven to a side comic relief role, forcing him to join a cult called the Church of the Collective, whose goal was to assist him in picking his image so that he could return to the Seven. And now was his moment to prove himself because the boys were on the water. The Deep interrupted them by blocking their passage inside the cave with a whale, but Butcher crashed into the whale nonetheless. As none of them dies, they get to enter the cave. The remainder of the Seven arrived quickly, but because Starlight had spotted Huey, she had to eliminate him to avoid suspicion because Homelander was following her. She was about to finish Huey at Homelander's command when she was sidetracked by a train colliding with Homelander, the work of Kimiko's brother. He was set to leave when Stormfront spotted him and struck him down with her lightning powers. She showed little regard for the destroyed houses and property during the fight, and she killed Kimiko's brother after only a few minutes of hard combat. Vought was left off the hook and suffered no consequences for using Compound V after the terrorist was killed. Stormfront became popular, but Homelander received criticism after a video of him lasering a civilian was revealed. Victoria Newman made fun of Vought and Homelander during this time frame. Homelander tried to speak with the people like he usually does, but they teased him to the point that he nearly lost it. He went to Stormfront for counsel, and she helped him by creating a video proving that the leak footage was Photoshop, and before you knew it, people were back in love with Homelander. Homelander developed feelings for Stormfront. As a result, they had unusual sex, resulting in a lot of collateral damage. The boys obtained information from an elderly woman about a soup named Liberty from the 1960s, who was a Nazi and racist, and she stated that the soup murdered her brother because he was black. The lads were puzzled about why the woman told them about a super in the 1960s until she clarified that the soup was Stormfront. Apparently, Stormfront doesn't age. So, Starlight dug into Stormfront's room and discovered some of her secret projects regarding a facility with several soups whose powers didn't quite work smoothly. The facility was established to develop a perfect compound V that anybody, not just babies, could use. So the boys proceeded on the secret trip to check out the facility, where they met Lamplighter, a former member of the Seven who accidentally killed Grace Mallory's 2 grandsons because he was blackmailed as being the mole at Vought. When they saw Lamplighter, a fight broke out between the two sides, releasing some rest subjects and compelling them to collaborate with Lamplighter to leave alive. Lamplighter felt horrible when they told him what had happened because he had burnt the house without knowing 2 children were inside. He was willing to make amends by testifying against Vought during the trial when they escaped. During that time, Starlight was kidnapped by Homelander, so Huey persuaded Lamplighter to assist him, and after a brief persuasion, he accepted. When Huey and Lamplighter broke inside the lab, Lamplighter opted to help Starlight and finish things there, setting himself on fire and triggering the alarms in the building. Starlight could take the energy from the alarm and charge it towards the door, allowing her to escape. As they're about to flee, Black Noir appears and tries to stop them, but Queen Maeve steps in and saves them, using almonds, one of his allergies, to knock him out. They both thanked Maeve and went to safety. Without Lamplighter, the boys lost their key witness. Still, Butcher was able to locate a replacement by intimidating Jonah Vogelbaum, Vought's former chief scientist, to testify against Vought during the trial. Everyone thought that this was it. They had gathered to see the live broadcast of Vought being humiliated publicly and eventually brought to justice. The heroes couldn't do anything because the trial was taking place and any suspicious activity would implicate Vought. As Jonah was about to speak, his head popped, creating shock and anxiety in both audiences and witnesses. And then, other people's heads start popping, generating panic in the trial. The trial was stopped and the channel was cancelled within a few seconds. The government subsequently requested more Compound V to create more soups to defend them, which aligned with Stormfront's secret plan. Homelander later took Stormfront to meet his son Ryan. Becca was not pleased, but she could do nothing. Becca soon irritated Homelander, causing Homelander to leave with Stormfront and Ryan. They taught Ryan how to use his superpowers and introduced him to the people of America. Becca quickly flees and runs to Butcher for assistance. She tells Butcher what happened, and he promises to return her son. Butcher is still uneasy about the boy and strikes a secret agreement with Stan Egger, in which he agrees to draw Homelander away and give them enough time to get the boy far away and to a safe area while he and Rebecca were let off the hook. Meanwhile, Huey and Starlight receive an unexpected visit from A-Train, who is eager to assist them because he was kicked out of the Seven for being too slow. However, he soon discovers this is not the case. When he was kicked out, the Deep offered him to join the church, which he did. And with the church's help, he discovered that he wasn't kicked out of the Seven because he was slow, but because he was black. So the Deep assisted him in finding evidence that Stormfront was a Nazi racist scum. With the proof provided by A-Train to Starlight and Huey, they could leak images and evidence proving that Stormfront was a Nazi racist. Stormfront was furious and Butcher took advantage of the situation. He began the operation while Stormfront was distracted, and everything was going according to plan until Becca discovered what Butcher was actually up to and pleaded with him to bring her son back. Butcher later changed his mind about handing Ryan over to Vought because of Becca. Homelander is furious when he learns about the circumstances involving his son. Stormfront arrives just in time to stop them. She is beating Kimiko and is ready to win the duel when Maeve interrupts and joins in. They had requested Maeve to join them earlier, but she refused, but later showed up after recalling what Homelander had done to her and her girlfriend Elena. Stormfront was relentlessly beaten, and when she realized she couldn't gain the upper hand, she flew away. As she flew, she noticed Becca and her son escaping and intercepted them. She clutched Becca's neck and tightened her grip. Ryan pleaded with her to stop since she might die if she did not, but she wasn't listening. Out of rage, he directed lasers from his eyes to Stormfront, and she fell. Her lovely face burnt to ribbons. Butcher arrived at the scene and observed what had happened, as well as Becca, who was bleeding severely from her neck. When he saw this, he ran to his wife and placed her head on his palm, promising to take care of the boy and not blame him of her death. As he listened to her final words, heated tears streamed down his cheeks. At that point, Homelander raced into the scene and saw his girlfriend's situation, but was revealed that Ryan was still alive. He summoned his son, but Ryan went to Butcher instead. He was about to lose it and kill Butcher when Maeve intervened. She showed him the video of him leaving the plane and allowing all the innocent civilians to die, threatening to release the film if he interfered in her relationship again, and insisted on letting them go because Butcher was present. Despite his frustration, Homelander let him go because he didn't want to lose the people's love. The boys had a successful day. Compound V was put on hold, the Nazi was stopped, and Starlight remained a member of the Seven. Homelander reverted to his noble conduct. Although growing cranky, Butcher brought Ryan to the CIA in hopes that he would be nurtured properly there, even though he was still angry, putting Becca's death on the boy. Mallory was also rehired, the boys as legal officials. Their names were now clear. Huey and Annie could date properly again, and Frenchie and Kimiko had established a bond. A-Train returned to the Seven, but the Deep did not, since there was only room for one person. The church leader was speaking with the Congressman Victoria Newman, and he seemed pleased with the church's progress. But as he opened his fresca, his head popped. Then at the end of the season, Huey was seen applying to work as a partner with the head popper, Victoria. After taking down Stormfront, the boys disbanded, and Huey worked with a congresswoman at the Bureau of Superhuman Affairs, Victoria Newman. Devoted more of his time to his daughter, and the rest of the team assisted the Bureau in finding criminals who were superhumans for the agency. Tony, Victoria's old acquaintance, appears addressing her by her name Nadia, raising suspicion of a secret history. However, Tony is taken out by his head being popped before he can even generate any further suspicion. During a meeting with the Secretary of Defense Robert, Edgar introduces V-24, a temporary form of Compound V that could be used for military purposes. It provides temporary superpowers for the person who takes it. He also expresses his guilt for adopting the superhero business and promises to return his organization to its original status as a pharmaceutical corporation. Later that day, Edgar decides to make Starlight co-captain of the Seven, regardless of the view of Homelander. Homelander also visits Stormfront, who appears alive but in severe condition. Butcher receives a discreet visit from Maeve, who informs him about a potential Homelander-killing weapon. She then offers him a dossier with personal information regarding Soldier Boy's murder and his old superhero team, the Payback, which included Black Noir, Countess, and 6 other heroes. She also gives him some temporary Compound V, warning him that he may need it to track down and question Payback about the weapon that killed Soldier Boy. Meanwhile, Huey, always in the thick of things, is on his way home when he witnesses his boss, Victoria, murdering Tony and concludes she is the head popper. Huey discloses Victoria's identity to Starlight, and the two conduct an investigation that leads to an orphanage for young soups where they find an old film of Edgar adopting Victoria. Butcher meets MM and asks him to return with him, but it is revealed that MM's family was murdered as a child by an army lad. Despite declining Butcher's invitation, he hands him one of his files on Soldier Boy. When Butcher finds gunpowder, he receives nothing from the soup and is even attacked, but he manages to flee before being killed. A girl tries suicide on a rooftop, but Homelander appears to talk her out of it, and it is also his birthday. He tries to persuade her by telling her about his horrible childhood and how he handled it. During that time, he hears about Stormfront's suicide, and owing to his mental state, he propels the girl to jump off again, this time against her will. Is told to return to Butcher after disclosing his recent meltdown to his wife. Butcher, on the other hand, had returned and was tending to his wounds when Huey called and informed him that Victoria was the head popper. Butcher, who had been contemplating taking the temporary V, decides to go for it. He revisits Gunpowder and, this time, overpowers him. He obtains all of the information he needed regarding Soldier Boy, including Grace Mallory's involvement, before killing Gunpowder with his temporary eye lasers. During Homelander's birthday celebration, he gives a public speech revealing his actual self and view on being superior to others, unexpectedly earning him higher rating. Meanwhile, the boys had reunited, and Huey had convinced Kimiko to break his hand to avoid Victoria getting suspicious of his unexpected request for a leave of absence. Butcher informs the team that they will be visiting Grace. However, Frenchie withdraws after receiving a call from Sherry, an old friend. Back at Vought, things were going well for Starlight. Alex, an old friend of hers, joins the Seven against her wishes, and Homelander picked Deep for the second slot. At Grace's place, the boys learn about Nicaragua, her encounter with Payback, and the start of her feud with the Supes after they had killed hundreds of men. However, she did not know anything about Soldier Boy's death. On their way out, Ryan, who has been hiding from Homelander with Grace all this time, gets angry that Butcher is leaving and stops him with his powers. But Butcher overreacts, damaging his relationship with the boy. Meanwhile, Frenchie gets captured by Little Nina, who needs info on Sherry for stealing products from her. On getting back to base, Frenchie tells Butcher about Little Nina, and Butcher sees it as an opportunity to infiltrate Russia for the soup weapon that can kill Homelander. Frenchie takes Butcher to Little Nina, allowing him to make a deal with her. They were to assassinate someone for her for information on the weapon's location. Back at Vought, Starlight tries to get many people on her side to fight Homelander. She lets Alex in on the plan, and Alex in turn tells A-Train. In Russia, Kimiko completes the assassination, returns with proof, and is given the weapon's location. Acting on Edgar's instruction, Newman holds a press conference intending to call out and sanction Homelander for his outburst the last time. However, there is an unexpected twist of events. She turns against Edgar, providing proof of alleged crimes that kicked him out of his own company, as Homelander had earlier confronted and threatened her. Homelander takes his place as the chairman of Vought. Later that night, Homelander visits Newman, and it is revealed she has stuck to an agreement with him. Back in Russia, the boys are attacked by security when they infiltrate the weapon's location, with the team almost dying. Huey and Homelander use V-24 to help them defeat the team of security guards. When they were done, they discovered that Soldier Boy was alive and that there was no weapon. Butcher lets him out, but Soldier Boy becomes unstable and almost kills Frenchie with a nuclear blast. Kimiko takes the blast for him and gets injured but doesn't heal, showing she has lost her powers. Back at Vought, Homelander killed Alex after being informed of his plan to take him out by A-Train. He showed Starlight Alex's body and told her if she didn't stay in line, Huey would be next. A few videos were found in the Russian lab, and Kimiko was rushed to the hospital upon entering New York. Later, Huey tells Starlight about Soldier Boy's existence, and Butcher gets more V-24. At the hospital the next morning, Little Nina gives Frenchie an assassination assignment, but Frenchie turns it down. He returns to Kimiko's room to find her awake. On the streets of New York, Soldier Boy becomes unstable again after hearing a Russian song, which led to the loss of many people's lives. Tries to find out about the attack and then meets Butcher and Huey. They go to meet the former organizer of the hero management in Vought. They learn from him that Soldier Boy had just been there for Countess' location. At Vought, Homelander locks Maeve up after discovering she is among those conspiring to overthrow him. Back at the hospital, Nina captures Frenchie after stepping out to grab coffee. Meanwhile, Butcher and Huey get to Countess before Soldier Boy and tie her up as a gift. Butcher drugged because he knew he would go against the plan. When Soldier Boy arrives, he and Butcher reach an agreement. He will help them defeat Homelander if they help him kill all of his past comrades, who helped in his ambush over 50 years ago. Kimiko soon gets kidnapped by little Nina. Nina walks in with Frenchie as her captive. On his arrival, Frenchie sees Kimiko and Sherry tied up in separate chairs. Nina asks him to choose the one that she should kill, but Frenchie cannot, so she orders them to kill Kimiko. However, Kimiko can't get free, but she gets into a bloody fight that leaves her with an open wound. Meanwhile, Starlight and MM arrive at the TNT's house, only to realize it's being hosted by the 10th anniversary of Herogasm, an occasion started by Soldier Boy as a means to kill stress in a sexual style. A lot of supes and humans alike attend. Soldier Boy came as well. Butcher and Huey followed to prevent a massacre. Huey tries to isolate the twins from Soldier Boy, but it does not work. Soldier Boy comes in, kills the twins, and destroys the entire building. Soon, Homelander arrives and a fight breaks out between him, Soldier Boy, Butcher, and Huey. Homelander had been scared since the first news of Soldier Boy's eruption in the city streets and Maeve's words about him being the weapon that could kill him. The fight is fatal, and they almost take down Homelander, but he escapes just in time. A-Train takes advantage of the chaos and kills Blue Hawk, a racist super vigilante who had killed some of the neighborhood black people when they angered him in a meeting that was meant to bring peace between the two parties. Outside, amid all the rubbles and dead bodies, Starlight made a video revealing the truth about Soldier Boy, dropping her role as Starlight and also trying to communicate to the people about the carefree attitude of Supes. At Vought, Homer tells Maeve the only reason she is still alive is because he wants to harvest her eggs and make strong children. At Starlight's house, Kimiko asks Starlight for Compound V after almost losing Frenchie in the fight with Nina's men. Meanwhile, Butcher and Huey find Soldier Boy's next victim, Mindstorm. Soldier Boy warns them not to make eye contact with Mindstorm, but Butcher accidentally does and gets trapped in his memory. Huey and Soldier Boy carry out their search for Mindstorm. Frenchie found out that Mindstorm's glare put Butcher to sleep. Butcher was trapped in the memories reminiscent of his brother, who Huey reminded him of. Back at Vought, Starlight gets the Compound V, but on her way, sees the side effect of V24 after 3 to 5 doses. Huey finds Mindstorm and teleports him. Just when Soldier Boy was about to kill him, bringing Mindstorm to where Butcher was, he had a deal with Mindstorm after begging. He would teleport Mindstorm far away from him so he wouldn't be killed if he was to free Butcher. Immediately, they free Butcher. Soldier Boy shows up and kills him before Huey can fulfill his promise. After the mission, Starlight calls Butcher and tells him about the effects of V24. Homelander then locates Ryan with Newman's help and helps her to orchestrate a move to become US Vice President. Meanwhile, Vought is being mocked by many people about Maeve's whereabouts. In response, Ashley has Maeve drugged and transported out of Vought, but eventually she escapes. Butcher knocked out Huey so that he could not take another dose of V24. Homelander killed Black Noir after he came out of hiding. He had stayed concealed because he was the one on the checklist to be killed by Soldier Boy, but he came out later, entrusting Homelander to help get rid of him. Homelander eventually killed him hesitantly for keeping vital information about Soldier Boy being his father from all these years. Meanwhile, the other boys, including Maeve, find Butcher and Soldier Boy and want to stop them from going forward with the plan and instead kill Soldier Boy. As Huey tries to talk Butcher out of heading towards the Vought Tower, Maeve throws out a neurotoxin that would have knocked out Soldier Boy and proceeds to lock MM and the rest of the boys in the vault to prevent them from interfering with their plan to kill Homelander. But Kimiko eventually breaks down the door and they head to Vought, where Frenchie tries to make a new neurotoxin in Vaught's lab. Butcher later turns against Soldier Boy during the fight because he almost hurt Ryan, while Maeve gets into a fight with Homelander. Homelander didn't want to fight back and wanted a reunion with his father. However, Soldier Boy still decided to kill him, saying that he was a disappointing version of the son he wanted, a replica of himself. During the epic battle finale, Soldier Boy eventually loses control and almost kills everybody, until Maeve intervenes, jumping off the top floor of Vought HQ with Soldier Boy in her grip. Due to Soldier Boy's nuclear attack, she loses her powers. Ryan decides to stay with Homelander. After the explosion at Vought, Grace brings Soldier Boy in and puts him under heavy sedation. After a few days, Butcher learns that he only has 12 to 8 months to live as the V-24 has started to take a toll on him. Everyone was trying to balance their lives. Maeve eventually moved away with her partner, Elena, while Huey and Annie were much closer than ever. Season 3 ended with Homelander landing amongst the crowd from the air with his son Ryan. Everyone clapped as he introduced him to the people, but one person threw something at his face and mocked them for both being Nazis, which Homelander reacted by lasering him to parts. Everyone cheered and clapped to his surprise. The smirk on Ryan's face generated a suspense of how much the upcoming season has in store for us.